10 Life Lessons from Seneca. How to stay calm, strong, and free in a chaotic world. Lucius Annaeus Seneca was a Roman Stoic philosopher, statesman, and dramatist who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, yet his thoughts feel unsettlingly modern. He lived in an age of extreme instability, where fortunes were made and destroyed overnight, where power was brutal and unpredictable, and where a single accusation could mean exile or death. Unlike many philosophers who lived safely on the margins of society, Seneca stood at the very center of power, serving as advisor to Emperor Nero, while fully aware that the same power he served could turn against him at any moment. This forced Seneca to confront life not as a theory, but as a daily psychological challenge. His philosophy was not designed to impress academics, but to help a human being remain composed, disciplined, and internally free while surrounded by chaos, fear, and corruption. And from this life, Seneca left behind timeless lessons, not about happiness in ideal conditions, but about how to endure, adapt, and remain yourself when life becomes hostile. So with that in mind, here are 10 life lessons we can learn from Seneca. 1. Time is your most precious possession. Seneca warns us that life is not short. We simply waste most of it. In his work on the shortness of life, he explains that people guard their money obsessively, yet allow strangers, obligations, distractions, and trivial worries to steal their time without resistance. According to Seneca, the greatest tragedy is not death, but living as if time were infinite, postponing life until later, while later quietly disappears. Most people are busy, but very few are truly alive. They rush from obligation to obligation, from distraction to distraction, convincing themselves that productivity equals purpose, while never stopping long enough to ask whether their lives are actually their own. Seneca urges us to treat time the way a wise person treats wealth, spending it deliberately, protecting it fiercely, and investing it only in what truly matters. Every hour you give away thoughtlessly is an hour you will never recover. And once you understand this, your priorities begin to change naturally, because wasting time becomes more painful than wasting money. 2. Learn to separate what you control from what you don't. One of Seneca's central teachings is the idea that peace of mind begins with a clear understanding of control. Most of our suffering, he argues, comes not from events themselves, but from our refusal to accept that many things lie beyond our power. We worry endlessly about other people's opinions, future outcomes, political events, economic conditions, and random misfortunes, things over which we have little or no control. At the same time, we neglect the few things that are fully within our reach: our judgments, our values, our actions, and our responses. Seneca teaches that true strength lies in focusing your energy where it actually matters. You cannot control whether life will challenge you, but you can control how you meet those challenges. You cannot control the behavior of others, but you can control the standards you hold yourself to. The moment you stop demanding that the world obey your expectations, you begin to experience a quiet but profound sense of freedom. 3. Prepare for hardship before it arrives. Unlike many modern self-help philosophies that encourage constant positivity, Seneca believed that strength is built by mentally rehearsing adversity. He advised practicing what he called premeditatio malorum, the anticipation of possible hardships, not to create fear, but to reduce its power. By imagining loss, illness, failure, or hardship in advance, you blunt their emotional shock when they eventually appear. Seneca believed that misfortune hits hardest when it catches us unprepared. A person who has already contemplated hardship is less likely to panic, less likely to collapse emotionally, and more capable of responding with reason instead of fear. This practice does not make life bleak, it makes it resilient. When you are no longer terrified of what might happen, you become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate, and far more difficult to break. 4. External success means nothing without inner discipline. Seneca repeatedly warned that wealth, status, and power are meaningless if the mind remains undisciplined. He observed that many people climb socially, financially, or politically, yet become more anxious, more fearful, and more enslaved as they rise. In his view, external success often magnifies inner weakness rather than curing it. A person who cannot control their desires will never have enough. A person who fears loss will never feel secure. And a person who depends on applause will always be at the mercy of others. Seneca believed that the only true form of success is independence of mind, the ability to remain calm in prosperity and steady in adversity. Without this inner discipline, success becomes a burden rather than a blessing, because it increases what you have to lose. 5. Anger is a temporary madness. Few emotions concern Seneca more than anger. In his work on anger, he describes it not as strength, but as a form of short-lived insanity that overrides reason and leaves destruction in its wake. Anger, according to Seneca, promises power but delivers regret. It convinces us that retaliation is necessary, that harsh words are justified, and that violence, verbal or physical, is the correct response to insult or injustice. Yet once anger passes, what remains is often shame, broken relationships, and irreversible consequences. Seneca did not argue that injustice should be tolerated, but that anger is a poor tool for correction. A calm mind, he believed, is far more capable of decisive and effective action than an emotional one. By learning to pause, delay reaction, and examine events rationally, we prevent others from controlling us through provocation. The person who cannot be easily angered is difficult to defeat. 6. Simplicity is a source of power. Living among Rome's elite, Seneca witnessed firsthand how luxury weakens character. He observed that the more people surround themselves with comfort, excess, and indulgence, the less capable they become of handling discomfort when it inevitably arrives. For this reason, Seneca deliberately practiced simplicity, even when wealth was available to him. He wore plain clothing, ate simple meals, and occasionally lived as if he had nothing. Not out of self-denial, but out of preparation. By reducing dependence on luxury, he strengthened his independence. When you need little, you are harder to control. When your happiness depends on few external conditions, you become more resilient to change. Seneca believed that comfort should be enjoyed cautiously and never allowed to become a necessity. Simplicity, in his view, is not poverty, it is freedom. Do not postpone living. Seneca observed that many people live as if life has not yet begun. They endure the present while waiting for a future moment when circumstances will finally allow them to live fully. But that moment rarely arrives. According to Seneca, postponing life is one of the most subtle forms of self-deception. We tell ourselves that fulfillment will come after a promotion, after financial security, after retirement, or after some distant milestone, only to realize that life has quietly passed us by. Seneca urges us to live now, not recklessly, but intentionally. This does not mean abandoning responsibility, but rather recognizing that meaning is created through how we engage with the present, not through future guarantees. Every day lived consciously is a day truly owned, and every day postponed is a day surrendered. 8. Fear of death is the root of most human suffering. Seneca believed that the fear of death quietly governs nearly everything people do. It pushes us to cling to status, hoard possessions, tolerate humiliation, obey unjust authority, and live cautiously rather than honestly. In his view, a person who fears death is never truly free. Seneca did not encourage a morbid obsession with dying, but rather a clear-eyed acceptance of mortality. He believed that contemplating death daily sharpened one's appreciation of life and stripped trivial worries of their power. When you accept that life is temporary, you stop postponing what matters. When you stop fearing death, threats lose their grip, and courage becomes possible. To Seneca, learning how to die was inseparable from learning how to live. 9. Choose your friends with extreme care. Unlike many modern ideas of friendship, Seneca viewed friendship as a serious moral commitment. He warned against surrounding oneself with people who encourage weakness, excess, or moral compromise, because character is contagious. According to Seneca, you become like the people you spend your time with, whether you realize it or not. A true friend is not someone who flatters you or entertains you, but someone who strengthens your character and holds you to higher standards. Friendship, in Seneca's view, should be built on mutual respect, honesty, and shared values, not convenience or utility. He also believed that a wise person is capable of solitude, but not isolation. One should be self-sufficient, yet open to meaningful connection. Choose your company carefully, because it shapes who you become. 10. Accept life fully, without complaining. Seneca's final lesson is perhaps the most difficult. He believed that much of human misery comes from resisting reality, complaining about what is, rather than dealing with it directly. This does not mean passive resignation or acceptance of injustice, but rather a refusal to waste emotional energy on bitterness. Seneca understood that life includes loss, pain, injustice, and unpredictability. To demand that life be fair is to set yourself up for endless frustration. Instead, he urged people to accept life as it is, act where action is possible, endure where it is not, and maintain dignity in both. A calm acceptance of reality allows you to conserve energy for meaningful effort. Complaining weakens the spirit, acceptance strengthens it. Conclusion: the quiet strength of Seneca. Seneca's philosophy was not about becoming invulnerable, wealthy, or admired. It was about becoming internally free. He taught that a person who controls their time, emotions, desires, and fears cannot be easily manipulated by circumstance or authority. His own life ended under orders from the very power he once served, yet he faced death calmly, proving that philosophy, when lived fully, becomes action. Seneca reminds us that strength does not need to be loud, and freedom does not require rebellion. Sometimes the most radical act is mastering yourself in a world that constantly tries to control you. And that may be his greatest lesson of all.